Alrighty. What's going on, guys? This is Kyle here. This is a topic I kind of want to talk about since this is something that everyone's been. It's been a buzz lately, and I'm kind of wondering about this myself. Or I just posed a question to you guys out there, the wrestling community. This is a wrestling video, and that is, can Ring of Honor survive or take much more if WWE continues to pickpocket and snatch up their talent? Just throwing that out there. Okay. Now, a lot of people always make the statements, you don't want, if you're a real fan, you will want your wrestlers, to be successful, whether it be TNA or WWE. You want the best for them, because they don't make, because they are, humans, they have responsibilities and lives and everything else. If they just work their entire career out on the indies, they won't get that much well known, and they won't get paid that much money to support their families and everything else. And I totally agree with that. Guys like CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Evan Bourne, Joe, AJ Styles, all these guys have worked on the indie scenes. They finally have the opportunity, to get their names known out there and get, are able to, afford, not afford, but, getting their names well known and getting, a guaranteed income, from WWE or TNA. But I just think that with Ring of Honor in particular, because Ring of Honor does not pay much money, if not at all, to their talent, and because, like I said, they're not a really big, reputable company where they could, afford to keep their talent. If someone should want to, take them up and bring them to their company, I think it hurts Ring of Honor a lot. And I'm not saying, guys like Chris Hero and, other guys who are in Ring of Honor or, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla or any independent wrestling company should stay there. I mean, if you're, 34, 35 years old and you only have like a couple of good years left in you, and you want to make, a huge impact and a huge splash while you can, because honestly, the window, the opportunity for wrestling, or the windows of opportunity of wrestling and being successful in it is very, very small. It doesn't last long, so, you have to get while the getting is good. So I get that, and I do understand. I'm not saying, stay on the indie scenes for the rest of your career and don't get paid any money, at all whatsoever, because, just do it just to please the fans. I understand these guys are people, too. They have to put food in their stomachs, clothes on their backs, and on their backs with their families' backs, and they have bills to pay themselves. So absolutely, I would want to see them go to WWE or TNA. Although sometimes I'm afraid that sometimes either of these companies will either ruin these guys' careers or they won't amount up to anything, become something, what they can be from the indie scenes, become a big major star. But, it doesn't matter, I guess, at the end of the day, it's a paycheck, so no matter what level you're on in either company. But I just think, WWE just continuing just to, I like to use the term rape Ring of Honor's roster, just rape it dry. It's just, it's bad for the company, and if they keep continuing just to take, just top talent from ROH, I really fear Ring of Honor's stability. Like, can they last another year, One thing I've always loved with Ring of Honor is that, they've always been able to replace the talent that they will lose. They're always able to replace them with someone else. Going back, early 2002, 3, and 4 area, well, from 2003 to 2006ish, talent that will always get picked up by TNA and WWE. ROH has always done a fantastic job, replacing them with someone else, and building that next star, up to the status that was a Samoa Joe or a Daniels, to fill that void. But it's been just kind of like, but during those years, it was just like periodically, WWE may take one superstar, TNA may take 2 superstars, like that. But in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say, WWE's just taken quite a handful of ROH's roster. I mean, during the whole, back in 2010, when they started the whole Nexus thing, WWE took a lot of talent from ROH. And that was noticeably due because of Jim Ross, just to show how smart of a guy he is. That Jim Ross spotted out Ring of Honor and said, "Hey, Vince, they have some good talent here. This is where you should pick at your talent." And so since Jim Ross, I guess you could say, put Ring of Honor and the talent of their roster and Vince's plain eye view, sense of view, he's been targeting that company and looking at their entire roster like ever since. That's why you got like Daniel Bryan and Dean Ambrose and Tyler Black, all these other guys that they just completely just taken from ROH in one fell swoop, back in 2010. I thought they hurted Ring of Honor, the roster a little bit, and then, now they've acquired Chris Hero. That's great. And now I'm hearing that WWE wants, they want the Briscoes and they want Adam Cole. But Ring of Honor are withholding these guys their contract and will not release them to go to WWE or for a developmental deal. And, the Briscoes have worked on the indie scenes for tons and tons of years. They've made huge splashes everywhere they've been, most notably their career in PWG and in Ring of Honor, but in other indie scenes too, but their most successful, what people mostly know them for is from PWG and Ring of Honor. They're up there in the age around Chris Hero. They're like at that middle stage age of their wrestling career. So I do think, they need a chance to go, to WWE. But it's just like, man, and Ring of Honor, they're trying to, build up the young stars. They got, like Adam Cole. All Adam Cole was being called up by WWE, but Kyle O'Reilly and, Tommaso Ciampa, Jay Lethal to an extent, I guess. Kevin Steen, they're building these guys up, but with WWE just continues to keep picking these guys like all in one fell swoop, it's really damaging the ROH roster. With Chris Hero coming back, him with Steen, along with Edwards and Davey Richards, I thought, okay, now the main event roster is pretty stable, with Hero back along with Steen. But now the Hero's gone, and now that they're taking the Briscoes, or wanting to take the Briscoes, I don't know how this is going to work out with the Briscoes and ROH. I don't know, it just seems like now that main event portion of the ROH roster may be a little bit stagnated and starting to see some cracks through the seams a little bit. Their upper mid-card talent, I think, still needs a little bit more of a boost. But the tag team division is solid. No more what I can say for TNA and WWE. But, the upper mid-card is okay. That still needs, I think, a little bit more work. But, I just think, with WWE just keep picking-pocketing these guys' talent like this, just repeatedly, with ROH really having no time to breathe, it's like they're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, okay, we're trying to build these young stars up, but as soon as we build them up, WWE takes them away. So it's like, okay, well, then we have to go out and find some new talent. And it's like, it just becomes very hectic, and with that being said, if you take all your talent and, like, your top talent at least, and you have a pay-per-view, and you look at the card, and some of the talent is not the most well-known, or homegrown talent that a lot of people like, that pay-per-view buys might not do very well, and the pay-per-view itself might not do too well because you don't have that many, big names, star power on the ROH pay-per-view lineup. So I just kind of, like I said, I'm not saying stay in the indie scenes, get forever and get paid peanuts. The Briscoes, I do think, need at least a chance. If they get the chance with the WWE and nothing falls through and they fall short, then I guess they have no choice but to come back to the indie scenes. So yeah, I agree. Go to the WWE, get that opportunity to develop into deal, see if you can snag it, get in that main roster, and do some stuff there. But it looks a lot like ECW from 1999, early 2000, where Vince just in one fell swoop took the last of ECW's top talent, which was Taz, the Dudleys, and I think Rob Van Dam, all the one fell swoop on a paycheck. And even then, like when Taz said, he had done everything he did in ECW, But, you know, he started to think, you know, do things for his family, you know, and, you know, he has bills to pay and stuff like that. And I totally get that. I totally understand, you know, I mean, like I said, these are people, you know, they have, at the end of the day, you don't wrestle just to wrestle. You wrestle to get paid money, because that's the whole thing, you know. You want your money, you want your cash. I totally get that. I want that too, but I'm a wrestler. I want to get paid money as well. I don't want it just to go out there and put my body on the line, just to be putting it out on the line. But I don't know, I think with WWE, with they just kind of like hovering over the ROH roster and just picking them like repeatedly, not really giving ROH some time to breathe, to build up new stars to replace the ones that are going to go in developmental deal and maybe called up to WWE. I just feel like with WWE just keep hovering down their back and just keep pickpocketing their talent within a week, every other week, they keep picking their talent, keep picking the talent, keep picking the talent. ROH, I think, is going to fall through the cracks. I'm sorry, and I hate to say that. That's my favorite. ROH is my favorite wrestling company in this current generation of wrestling. That's my favorite wrestling company. You know, I've watched these guys been built up from the ground up, you know, for almost 10 years. 10 years makes tomorrow. So, you know, it's a sad thing, but it's just my little spin or whatever on it. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do you guys think that, you know, WWE continuing to get the ROH talent, do you think it's going to hurt ROH in the long run? And if it does, do you think ROH could last, you know, another year, another 2 years? You know, do you see a future for ROH? Should WWE continue just to pick their talent like repeatedly, you know, just constantly? So let me know what you guys think about this topic. Leave your comments down in the box below. Subscribe. Peace.